Hi everyone and welcome. Today I'm going to talk about all the books that I finished in January. Now, in my February TBR, I mentioned that my January reading month was really good, and I still stand by that statement, but I actually only finished 6 books, and I then made progress in a bunch of books. I think 4 more books that I made progress in but didn't finish. So even though the total number of books that I finished isn't that high, I actually did read 3,400 pages, which is more than what I normally read in any given month. I finished 2 audiobooks, 2 physical reads, and 2 ebooks. And the audiobook number is a little bit low. That's because the last week of January I got COVID, and so I wasn't really driving to work or having any commute time, so I didn't really listen to a lot of audiobooks in that period. And to be honest, that last week of January I also didn't really read that much. So otherwise, the numbers would have been even higher. Of those 6 books, of course, all of them are in the adult fantasy genre. Is anybody surprised at this point? And one was a standalone / a continuation of a series, 1 was a continuation of a series, and then 3 were actually starts of series, which doesn't sound that good, but 2 of those only have the first book out, so I'm already on track, and then the third one only has the second book out, and I am going to read that in March, so it's not as bad as it sounds. Now, in total, that's only 5 books, but I also had 1 reread, and I'm not going really to count that in the statistics that I have, but that reread was also the first of a series. And I am going to go over all the books chronologically, starting with the ones that I finished first, and that is actually the reread. The Baron Nightingale by Catherine Arden. The Winter Night trilogy, this is the first book in the Winter Night trilogy, is one of my favorite trilogies of all time, and I was so excited to reread this together with Evie, and we did a spoiler-filled discussion of the first book that I will link in the description box down below, and upon a reread I loved it even more. This is a very atmospheric, fairy tale-esque retelling. It is influenced a lot by Slavic and Russian folklore, and if you like that type of setting, then I definitely think you should pick it up now because it's a perfect winter read. In this one we follow Vasha, and we follow her from when she's a young girl and she's slowly growing up, so definitely also a coming-of-age story. And she lives in a very secluded village that is surrounded by the Russian forests. She believes in the old faith, she sees the household spirits, and she actually helps them. But we also have the upcoming of the Christian faith, and of course this is going to clash. Loved it. I just finished the Witcher series a couple of months ago, and even though these are 2 completely different series, I could definitely see that both of them have the influence of Slavic culture, Slavic folklore, and especially the monsters that you have in these 2 series, because yes, surprisingly enough, you also have some monsters here. I could recognize the similarities. So that was something that I quite enjoyed as well. It was a 5-star read when I first picked it up. It is a 5-star read when I reread it. So yes, definitely started the year off strong. Then next up, I read a book by one of my now new favorite authors, and that was Dark Sea's End by Richard Nell. So this is the first book in the Beyond Ash and Sand trilogy. Last year I read Ash and Sand trilogy, starting with Kings of Paradise. Absolutely loved that grimdark series, and now I wanted to read this one, Beyond Ash and Sand. So the author has said that you can start with either this trilogy or Ash and Sand. I think that chronologically it's better to start with the Ash and Sand trilogy, especially because it's already finished, and for this one only the first book is currently out. It follows a main character that we already met in the Ash and Sand trilogy. This book is not as epic in scope as the original trilogy, it's also not as dark. The original trilogy was definitely grimdark plus, I would say. This one has some darker moments, but I wouldn't even call it grimdark anymore. But I still really enjoyed it. It was another strong entry by Richard Nell, and I'm very excited to read the second book in the trilogy, and hopefully it comes out soon. So yes, I can definitely recommend this. If you have already read the Ash and Sand trilogy, you will not be disappointed by this one. Then a book that I unfortunately was a little bit disappointed by, and that is Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie. So this is the first standalone in the First Law universe, so it's a standalone, but it's also a continuation of a series that I'm currently in the middle of, and I had quite high hopes for this one. I really enjoyed the original First Law trilogy, and I now want to get to Age of Madness, so the second trilogy in this world, as soon as possible, but I have been told that you need to read the standalones first. This one, I don't really know what to think about it. I do have a spoiler-filled discussion planned this Sunday, so the 6th of February on my channel. And I am going to talk about this standalone together with Steve and Joanne. So, I don't know. I think that most of us weren't really blown away by this one. It had a lot of the same formula that we know from the original trilogy, and by now I'm a little bit bored by that. I'm over it. The humor is still there, the writing style is still very good, but towards the end, I've seen it all before, and I actually liked when we had some small sneak peeks of our original characters. And the new characters I found very entertaining, but they weren't to the same level, and especially the relationships between these new characters weren't really at the same level as in the original trilogy, and as a character-driven reader, that's something that I'm always looking for. The revenge plot here I really enjoyed, but it just took too long. This is a pretty long book. I don't really know how long it is in total, 660 pages, and I think that it could have been easily 200 pages shorter and it would have been better. It kept dragging on and battles were fought and it was just too much for me, to be honest. So yes, I do think that it would have helped if we had maybe a little bit more editing skills here and just some stronger character relationships especially. But I am going to continue with the heroes. We'll see what that brings, and I do know that I will probably like the second trilogy because if I'm not mistaken, this does follow the same characters as the original trilogy, while here that's not the case. So it is going to be an interesting discussion on Sunday. Let's just keep it at that. Then next up, I have a book that I read as a buddy read together with Joanna, and we had a lot of fun buddy reading this one, and that is Master of Sorrows by Justin T. Call. So this is the first book in a quartet. How is the quartet called? It's, I think, The Lost Gods or The Fallen Gods, something with gods at the very least. And the second book, Master Artificer, is already out and I have ordered it by now because I really enjoyed this one. Now, I think that after I finished it, I was blown away and I gave it 5 stars. After thinking about it a little bit, it's not really a 5-star read. It's a fine book. It's not exactly what I gravitate towards normally, but I just had so much fun while buddy reading it with Joanna, and it reminded me of The Faithful and the Fallen, which, if you don't know, that's a series that I don't really enjoy, but I really liked Corbin's storyline in that series, and especially in the first book. And this book reminded me of that, but then without the predictability. It's not as dark as I thought it was going to be, because this is often pitched as, well, let's follow the Chosen One, but the Chosen One is actually destined to become the Dark Lord. And here you definitely don't feel it yet. So I thought it was going to be grimdark. That's not the case. I have now heard from some people that the second book turns into a lot darker story. So I'm quite excited to pick that one up. For now, this is definitely one that I think, if you really like The Faithful and the Fallen, you will absolutely love this one. But even if you don't like The Faithful and the Fallen for the same reasons as I do, which is the predictability and just the wish fulfillment the entire time, I think you might like this one more. Now, our main character is a little bit of a Gary Stu. He always knows what to do in a situation, most often than not, and he acts sometimes a little bit more mature than his age would require or would expect. So I do have some minor issues, but still very excited to pick up the second one. And I also received some novellas from the author that I'm going to read ASAP, because this will give a little bit more information about the lore, because you do have interference of the gods in this series as well, and that's something that I quite enjoy. So I do really want to read those novellas now. And then I finished the audiobook of The Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sulin Tan, which was an anticipated release for me, and it absolutely blew me away. It was a 5-star read. I adored it so much, I cannot tell you. This is the first one in the duology, but it actually reads perfect as a standalone. If you would have given it to me and told me it's a standalone, I would have believed you, because it really ties up the story nicely towards the end. This is a retelling of a Chinese myth of the moon goddess, but here we actually follow her daughter, and she is on a quest to save her mother, and for that she is actually in hiding. She's undercover in the Celestial Kingdom, the court of the Celestial Kingdom. And I really liked her journey and following her, where she is still on that quest and she is still devoted to her mother, but on the other hand, while living in this kingdom, she also makes relationships with other people and she comes to care for other people, and sometimes that's a very difficult choice that she has to make. This does have a love triangle, which is something that I normally do not like, but I absolutely adored it here. I do think that it was executed towards perfection, in my opinion, and yeah, I just loved it. This is a very sweet story. I think that for some people it might be too sweet. It does read a little bit on the younger side, but I didn't mind at all. And I think if you like something like Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Merlier, which is my favorite book of all time, you might enjoy this one as well. I do know that some people think that for Daughter of the Forest, in the first half, for example, our main protagonist, Sorka, is alone for most of the time, and some people think that that's a little bit boring. Here, our main protagonist, who has a quite similar quest as Sorka, is not alone, and she immediately develops relationships with other people. So I do think that if you like one, you will probably also like the other, and yes, I was very pleasantly surprised by this one. And then the last book that I finished, I am honestly very angry with myself that it took me so long to finally pick up this series again, and that is A Veil of Spears by Bradley P. Bolio. This is the third book in the Song of the Shattered Sand series, which is 6 books in total, and then plus a novella, so actually 7 books in the main series. 5-star read. I don't know if I like this or Daughter of the Moon Goddess most, but both of them were amazing, and it actually took me over a year to finally pick up this series again. After finishing this third one, I know that I'm going to finish the series at least before the end of summer, because I just want to know what happens. This is an epic desert fantasy series. This one, at least in the first book, we follow Jada, and she is on a revenge quest because her mother died. She knows that the 12 kings of Sharakai have something to do with it. She doesn't know what, and she goes on this quest, on this journey, to find out what happened and to also continue the legacy of her mother. But then it opens up. These 12 kings are immortal. They have been given their power from the gods. And you learn a lot. This has a lot of lore. This has a very rich history and world building. This has tons of different magic systems. And yeah, I'm absolutely loving this. The political intrigue here is also very good. And that started in the second book. In this third book, it continues. And I was a little bit afraid that I wasn't really going to remember everything that happened. But I do think that Bradley P. Bolio did a great job in just the first couple of chapters reminding you softly and not really on the nose what happened. So I could follow quite quickly. And yeah, 5-star read, and I do want to read this fourth one, hopefully in March, so that I can definitely continue this series, and I think that this has the possibility of becoming one of my top series of all time. So those were all of the books that I actually completed in January. I'm now just going to very quickly show you the books that I made progress in, that I will hopefully finish in February, but at this point, who knows. So the first one is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. If I'm not mistaken, we are going to have a spoiler-filled discussion over on Taylor's channel for this one this weekend, so I'm definitely going to make progress. This is a very short one, as you can see, but even though I haven't made a lot of progress yet, I am going to start continuing this book today and hopefully finish it quite soon. Then, one that I made a lot of progress in, but it's taking me forever to finish this one, that is Queen of Fire by Anthony Ryan. So this is the third book in the Raven's Shadow trilogy, the first book being Bloodsong, one of my favorite books of all time. This is a disappointment. I'm a little bit over halfway through. I have no desire to pick this one up. I am going to finish this one because Anthony Ryan is still a very talented writer, and I do want to continue in this world. He has a duology in this world that takes place after this final book in this trilogy. He has some other books that he has written that I definitely want to give a try, but this third one is just a disappointment. I think that most of the characters have concluded their arc, so in terms of the characters, you're not really that invested anymore. There aren't any emotional moments, but then the plot drags on and on and on. Somebody in the comments of one of my last videos said that she jokingly calls this book the book about the war that never ends. Yeah, that's completely true. So many things happen here that just should have been edited and made a little bit more simple. So many things that happened here shouldn't be in the book. And it keeps dragging on and on. And it's not even that I dislike anything, it's just that at this point, I couldn't care less anymore. So that's definitely a big disappointment because, like I said, Bloodsong was one of my favorite books of all time. Then the next one, The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. So I finished part 1, which is like 160 pages in. I'm probably not going to continue in February because I want to finish this by the end of March. And I have quickly realized that once I start reading this book, I will not want to take it slow. And I will want to finish it, and I want to finish it towards the end of March because we are going to have a live discussion for this one, and I don't want to have finished it 2 months in advance because then I would probably not remember a lot. So this one I am not going to pick up in February, I think, but what I have read so far I absolutely adored. And then the last book that I made a lot of progress in, and I'm going to finish this one up in the next couple of days, and that is Sorcery of a Queen by Brian Naslund. So I'm listening to this one on audiobook, that's why it's taking me so long because I'm still quarantining. And this one is the second book in the Dragons of Terra trilogy. I absolutely loved the first one. The second one is funny, it's very lighthearted, it's just a quick and easy read, and I am enjoying what I have been reading so far. I am currently 150 pages in, so definitely still a way to go, but I do like how it picked up from the first book. So those are all the books that I have either finished or made progress in. So I do think that I had a quite good reading month in January. I do hope that February takes off at this or on the same note. And please let me know what you have read in January, what your favorite book of the month was, what your biggest disappointment was, if you had one. Let's hope that you didn't have one, but if you had one, let me know in the comments down below. As always, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and see you next time. Bye!